Well, hey, good afternoon. Today we're going to disassemble, clean, and reassemble a Lewmar 16 ST self-tailing single-speed winch. I had a lot of difficulty finding exact information on this winch on the internet, so I thought I would do a quick disassemble, clean, and reassemble in case anybody else out there has a Lewmar 16 self-tailing single-speed winch. First problem I had was in trying to figure out how to get the top cap off both the Lewmar winch and the Barlow primaries that I have on this boat. I believe the Barlows are 23 primaries, and I believe I have a Barlow 16, and the top cap on the Barlows is a little different than the Lewmar. This is the one off one of the Barlows, and you can see these two holes in the top cap. The Lewmar is a little bit different. It has two recessed grooves kind of in the top cap, and I couldn't really figure out how to get these things off without a special tool. So I made a very simple tool. Took an old piece of wood stock, measured the distance between the spacing on the holes first for the Barlows, and so this first set of screws fits snugly into the holes in the Barlow winch. Spacing was a little bit different for the Lewmar, and so I had to put a third screw in, and the distance between these two screws fits the Lewmar winch. And so to take the top cap off, you just put it in the groove and turn it, and it comes off very easily. It's not a lot of pressure on those. But that's my little homemade tool for getting the winch top caps out. Once you remove the top cap, which comes off very easily, the next step is to remove the self-tailing ring, which is grooved and has some you can see the grooves in there, but it lifts right off. And on the Lewmar, then the next thing that has to come out are two brass collets that hold the drum in place. And so we'll take those two little collets out. They're not held in there by anything once the top cap is off. Now at this point we'll be able to just remove the drum. However, there are a couple of pawls in there that will engage, and so we'll have to kind of twist the winch drum a little bit as we raise it to get it to come off. And you can see how easily the top drum came off. Now, as long as you don't remove the self-tailing groove, the pawls in the main part of the drum will stay in place. You can see them down in there. If you take this off, then those pawls can pop out, and so it's better to leave the self-tailing groove in place. You'll notice that one of the bearings came out with the drum, and I can remove the second one along with the little plastic washer. Now at this point we'll be able to pull the center shaft out. However, there's also two pawls at the bottom of that shaft, and so we'll have to give it a little twist. So with just a little bit of a twist and holding the gears in place, those pawls will disengage and the main shaft comes out, and you can see the pawls at the bottom. The very last step in disassembling the Lewmar 16 is to pull this pin out. Just slides in. It is grooved on one side, and that groove goes up against the the winch body, and that allows you to pull out this bearing. There's a little red plastic insert in there that will come out, so hang on to it. And then the main bearing, or the main gear, I'm sorry. Now there's one other piece that I didn't know what it was for. You see that black plastic at the bottom of the base of the winch. I thought that was just plug, but it doesn't come out from the bottom. It actually pushes up through the top into the gear body. And that piece is important, so I took it out to clean it, but I'm going to leave it in place. It actually keeps the gear raised up a little bit and gives it something to spin on, so it's important that go back in before you reassemble. I'm going to take apart the top of the self-tailer just because it's important to be able to get into the pawls inside the drum. So 3 screws. They're pretty long ones. And this self-tailer is spring-loaded. It won't fly off in your hand or anything, but it is spring-loaded. Just be aware of that. I'll show you the springs in a second. So you can take that off as an assembly and just set it aside. So now with the self-tailer removed, you can see a couple of things. There's 3 springs that put a little bit of pressure on that self-tailer so it can take different diameters of rope. And you can see the pawls. Now I've already cleaned this winch. It was really gummed up with heavy, hard grease and all that kind of stuff. And I've cleaned it all already. But basically I've taken each of the pawls out. There are very small springs in each pawl that you have to be very careful with. I lost a couple here disassembling it and trying to put it back together. But I've now learned the right way to do it, and that's why I'm going to show you how to put it back together. To clean it, I soaked it in a degreaser first, all the pieces, and then wiped each one clean. Had to use a toothbrush and a small screwdriver to get rid of some of the hardest material in there, but got it all cleaned out. For lubrication, I used Lewmar gear grease, just a little bit, doesn't take a whole lot. You particularly want to make sure you get the bearings very well greased. The gears should be greased. And the shaft should have a light coating of grease on it. You do not want to put grease on the pawls because these need to be able to move very freely, and so it's recommended that some light machine oil, in my case I use some zero weight motor oil because that's what I had, and a Q-tip just to kind of get in around all of the pawls and the springs. Very simple to do. Same thing on the shaft. Once you have it all cleaned and lubricated, it's time to reassemble. And here's where I learned something kind of the hard way, I guess, in trying to do this. First thing we want to do is remember our little plastic plug in there that has to stay in. It goes in from the top and pushes down. So if you were going to remove it, you'd push it out from the bottom. But you make sure that's in there before you start. Next, we take our primary gear. You can see it's flat on one side and it's got these an area to receive the pawls, so the pawl side goes up. Slide it into the winch body. Take the small gear. Looks like it's identical on both sides, so it can go in either way. Line it up and put the pin in. Remember that you want the flat side of the pin up against the valve housing body. So it just slides down like that. Next we'll take our plastic ring, put it over the main body and the 2 bearings. They're identical, so it doesn't matter which one goes on first. And we do that. Next we can put in the main shaft. Now again, remember that those pawls need to be kind of pushed in order to get the thing to slide down into the body. And give it a little twist and the pawls will fit into place. Now comes the part I had problems with. I had cleaned and assembled the drum. I had put the pawls and springs in place, and I tried to then put the valve or the winch drum over the body. Every time I did that, it would push the pawls out and springs would go flying, and it was a real mess. So here's the real trick. What you want to do is you want to put the self-tailor top crowns back on. And a couple things to notice. You'll see a couple of round indentations here, here, and here that accept the springs, and then the three screws and screw holes. So you have to line all that up and then screw this back into place. Well, I don't know if those screws, the distance between them are any different, but I did rotate the crown around a little bit and reset it, and now they fit. So I guess if you can't get them started, try rotating it around one screw distance at a time. And these should be, you know, snug. Okay, so we got the drum assembly back together. You can see our pawls down in there. They've been lightly machine oiled and everything's in good shape. Now again, the real critical part about this is making sure that you put the crown on before you try to put the drum back on. Because those pawls will catch as it slides down, and if they get knocked out of their space, when you don't have the crown on, they'll shoot out. So I learned that the hard way. So now with the crown in place, mounted on top of the drum with the three mounting screws, you can see the pawls down in there. The next step is to just simply slide the drum down over the main part of the winch. And again, you'll have to probably use two hands, and you might even need a small screwdriver to just push those pawls back a little bit. So using a small screwdriver, I will just kind of push the pawls back. And as I rotate it around and push the pawls back, she'll drop into place. A little bit more turn, and she goes all the way where she's supposed to be, seated now properly. Alright, now it's a sweet sound when it all works together nicely. Now the last couple last steps, you want to put your two collets back in place. Now it's important to note that to get them fully seated, you will have to raise the shaft up just a tad bit. There's a recess, there it goes, there's a recess in that shaft, but you have to raise the shaft up just ever so slightly. They should be tucked in there nice and tight. Now the next step is to put the self-tailing ring on. Now the only thing you have to do here is you have to pay attention to where your stripping piece is here in the winch. You want that to be recessed in here. You want the stripping thing here to be recessed in here. So you might have to move things around a little bit because the grooves in the ring have to engage with the collets. So it's not quite lined up perfectly, so just turn a little bit, and now it's fully seated. And you can see the ring and the collets are all engaged. The last step on the Lewmar 16 is to put the cap back on. You'll notice the little O-ring in the cap, and that's just really there to provide some friction so that the cap won't loosen. You can't use the tool I made on the cap because on the Lewmar at least these recessed things are grooved in one way and you can only put pressure on it in one direction. So this will just be finger tight, just with whatever I can do with my bare fingers. and that is the fully assembled Lewmar 16. You can hear how well the pawls are clicking into place. Now when I go to reapply this to the boat, I'm going to have to take the drum back off so that I can put the mounting bolts back. In many cases you don't need to remove the base from the boat, but this is my first time disassembling this Lewmar, and I could tell it was really gummed up because it was very hard to turn. And so I decided to just go ahead and dismount the whole thing from the cabin top and bring it home and play with it. And I'm glad I did. Now that I have a good understanding of how it works, and it's cleaned up quite a bit, then the next time it needs service, it'll be a much easier, quick job right on the boat. Next, we're going to be working on some Barlow 23s and a Barlow 16. So this was one of my cabin top winches, and the other one is not the same. It's a Barlow, and then my two primaries are Barlows. So I will be trying to disassemble those at the boat so that I don't have to take them all off, and I'll show you that video next time.